to the All Things Good podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the All Things Good podcast. I am your coach and your host, Giovanna Cirillo. Thank you so much for tuning into the podcast that helps you with mental health, self-development, and your overall wellness, helping you become the greatest version of yourself. Today, we have a special segment. We are going to be discussing many topics in honor of Black History Month. And though we say history, we know that it is still current. The things that are taking place are still in our current reality. But the point of this discussion is to see how we can change our future, not just for ourselves, but for our kids and those after them. So today we have the lovely Michelle. Michelle, if you can please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Michelle. I'm a legal professional, 9 to 5 at Morgan Stanley, but I own my own business. I'm a certified relationship coach at Annalisa Firms. So,
Awesome.
and
Thank you so much for joining today's panel. We
thank
also
you.
have Control K with King. Did I did I say that right? I feel
Yeah,
like I
you got
chopped
it
that
right.
up.
You got it
Okay.
right. What's going on, everybody? My name is King from Control K with King podcast. I've been podcasting for quite a while. This is my second venture on this one. I'm also a 20-year licensed optician as well.
Awesome, awesome. We have the lovely Khalilah Jackson. Tell us about yourself.
Hi. My name is, I go by Dr. Lily. I am a research psychologist by day. I also own a business. I am a salon owner, two-time breast cancer survivor, and I am happy to be here.
Yes,
Praise
yes,
God.
yes, yes. Awesome. And then we have Nate, big dog Nate. Tell us about yourself, Nate.
What's going on, people? My name is Nate, owner and operator of Williams Media Group, Williams Media Management Group as well. I am a veteran manager by day and philanthropist, speaker, and organizer every day of the life.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so I'm excited for tonight's discussion. I know this discussion is definitely needed, especially in a time like this, and of course for Black History Month. So let's dive into the topics. The first topic of the hour is going to be on gun control. Y'all ready for this?
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we know it's a little touchy. This whole thing is going to be touchy. But when we talk about gun control in Black communities, what are we really asking for? Are we asking for safety, accountability, or systemic protection that we haven't historically received? Let's talk about that. Who would like to go first?
I'll go first. Um, so we talk about gun control, and we hear all politicians, whether they for it or against it, saying that the violence is outrageous with gun control. But my question will always be the same. I've never gone to another country and come back with guns. I don't
Mm,
think half the kids who are in some of these areas that we live in, that they call poverty areas, are able to go to other countries or places to get guns. Guns are sold in different places, such as certain centers and things of that nature. So if we don't have the opportunity or the knowledge of where to get these guns from, where are they coming from? How can you be a politician and how can the government tell us they're going to be a hard stop on gun violence when those things come in through you?
mhm.
So where does it really begin? Is my question.
I like that. I like that concept because it sounds like what you're saying is they're trying to control a problem that they're creating.
That they created.
Would anyone else like to
Well,
add
we
to that?
already know that they created that. You know, it's not a secret. They try to make it a secret. And and I'm talking about when I say they, I'm not conspiracy theorist they. I'm talking specifically about the powers that are in control of the ones that are in control of making the laws. All right. These laws were set up in ways so that certain people can have free access, but when it became free access for us, like in the Black Panther movement back in the day, that's when stuff started to change. And we don't make guns. All right. We don't make them. So that stuff that's coming in and out, listen, if they can stop other things from coming in and out, they can do that too, if they really want to.
I agree. Ladies, you have anything to say on that?
I have the same perspective, but a little different. Because I feel like even if I mean, I'm a responsible gun owner, right? And I don't have any issues with guns. My thing is how they are used. So, yeah, they're brought into the country by people that don't look like us, but for the people that use them negatively to kill a person that looks like them, how do we stop them from even picking up the guns, even if they're there? Like, uh, just because it's there doesn't mean you have to use it against your brother or sister, you know?
Yes, I definitely love that perspective.
And I agree with what she said. Some of us are, licensed gun owners. You know what I mean? For me, I mean, listen, man. I mean, anybody that know me know I grew up in the projects. Like my years of 12, 13, 14, 15, and a little bit up before I went to prison. Like, yeah, we had guns, and we didn't have just one gun. We had plenty of guns, and we knew where to go buy those guns from.
Mhm.
Were we responsible? We were young, and we were definitely not knowledgeable about anything, right? Because if we look at it now, or after I look at it now, we fought for blocks or um, areas that we don't own,
Yeah.
right? So it becomes a thing of like, and again, I'm speaking firsthand, and like I said, there's statute of limitations, so I'm okay, right? So what I mean, at the end of the day, it's just that when I watch these documentaries on Chicago, say no less than 3, 4, 5 years ago, right? And these kids they're shooting people with automatic like Uzis. Where is a 17, 18-year-old kid getting this from?
Right.
Right? Like what are we doing? Like, I don't when I look at the kid FBD Duck, or however you say his name, and no disrespect to him, I respect the dead, but like this guy was coming out the Gucci store, right? In one of the main areas of Chicago,
Jesus, man.
right? And the next thing you know, he's hit with an automatic weapon. A woman behind him had nothing to do with it, hit with an automatic weapon. You know why they had so much issues with that issue? Because it was 2 white women who got shot by these automatic weapons,
Mm.
There you
right?
go.
So at the end of the day, I do agree with her. Like if you are a gun owner, of course you be safe. You go to the range. You know what I mean. You learn because you get it for protection. But I think my overall thing is the type of guns that we
Yeah.
have,
Yeah, I
right?
agree.
Like
Mhm.
you can't tell most of these kids today at 13, 14 don't do that. I just watched on the news where a 12-year-old kid shot up a party through a window
Mm.
Wow.
with guns that I know he did not bring into this country.
Mhm.
Right.
And he is not old enough to even identify with being responsible with that gun. So
Mm.
who is responsible for bringing these into our communities? As long story, man, it's a lot. It's a lot. I believe the same thing they did with crack cocaine. I mean, we all watched
Right.
Snowfall.
You
Snowfall
know
was
how that
not
went.
something they made up. Snowfall was something that was true. And the
Mhm.
guy who they was talking about is still alive.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So like it's crazy. Yeah.
I know, honestly, I've never really heard a serious person advocate for just banning guns. That's never been really the conversation. That's a straw man. I think
Mm.
the real conversation has always been about sensible regulation.
Right.
Keeping firearms out of the hands of people who absolutely should not have them. Right? Some of those automatic weapons, they don't need to be running around the street all the time. You
Yeah.
know, that's not necessary. But you still have to balance the rights. For me, this is basically a pro-life issue.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Preserving life should be the guiding principle. It should be the guiding principle. We can protect rights and make illegal acquisition extremely difficult. We can do both. And it really should
Right.
not be an argument. It can be done. And the sooner we get people in places that need to be that actually serious about it, the faster it'll happen.
Yeah.
Michelle, do you have something?
Yes. So I am licensed to carry, but I'm licensed to carry because criminals exist, and if they could walk around with it, so can I. So
Well,
right.
That's a
So
fact. That's a fact.
so that's how I feel. But I personally, if it shouldn't even exist. If guns didn't exist at all, we have countries where cops aren't even walking around with guns.
mm,
Um, if it didn't exist at all, then we wouldn't have any problems, you know? I mean, some countries they deal with stabbings and stuff like that, but there's no guns, but their crimes are less because of it. But again, since we're in America and this is where it's allowed, I think I should be able to carry, which I do. But I also have a problem with how quick it is and how easy it is to be able to carry. You
Right.
know, I don't know where everyone else is. Nate, I know where you're at, but I'm in Philadelphia. And when I applied for it, I swear I submitted it. And by the time I went to the bathroom and came back out, I was approved to come to the place. I was like, what evaluation did
Wow.
they do?
dang.
You know what I mean? So it shows that anybody can get a gun. And that's crazy to me because there's a lot of people dealing with mental illness
Right.
and, you know, things that aren't documented and you know, and even if it was, they didn't check. They don't know if I'm crazy. I came up there thinking they were going to do, I was like, all right, when I go in person, maybe that's when they'll do the deep background. They asked me like 5 questions.
Wow.
And I was like, are y'all for real right now? Like, that's it? They were like, yeah. So that's how I feel about guns. I feel like people aren't being evaluated. Anybody could get one if you're of age, and they don't look into it. They say they do, but they don't. You couldn't. You. It's no way you did that in seconds. You
Mm.
know, first of all, it's a HIPAA for mental or anything, so you're not getting those details. I think they need to go do a deeper dive, like maybe ask for medical history and then do like a evaluation, have a psychologist or somebody that's doing an evaluation. It needs to be deeper.
It's
Right.
harder to get a
I
license
agree.
for a car.
Yeah,
It's
Yeah.
harder to get a license for a car
that's
than it
true.
is to get a gun, which is insane to me because you just saw over the past what is it, month or so, a whole lot of fuss being made out of a vehicle being a deadly weapon,
Mhm.
right? Because of Miss Good up there in Minnesota. And they made every excuse in the world, the people that were on the other side of it made every excuse in the world about that car being a deadly weapon and that man's life was in danger. But look how easy it is to get your hands on a gun.
Right.
No
Exactly.
training, no nothing.
I
That's
agree.
sensible.
The access that we have to it should not be so simple. As Michelle said, we should
Mhm.
have a series of questions and
Training,
training and you just evaluation mentally, physically, everything
go through the
before we
test.
can get our hands onto these type of weapons. So I'm definitely
Mhm.
in agreement with that. And with that being said, a lot of states are now becoming open carry. Florida is an open
Mhm.
carry state. When I'm in Florida, so when I was informed of that, I was like, I didn't get too scared, but I'm just like, now I feel like there's a greater potential for
Potential.
more crime.
Yeah.
Everyone is going off and they're showing their guns, whereas as before it was just for safety precautions, but now everyone can be doing it just to show off, like, okay, I'm locked and loaded, right?
Mhm.
So with that being said, how do we hold space for the people that have fear? You know, because they know that these weapons are so easily accessible while addressing the root causes of gun violence.
I I honestly think it's what America is. Everything is for money, right? You can sell anything here
Yeah.
as long as somebody's making money off of it and
Yeah.
somebody's tax it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? They legalize marijuana so they can tax it.
Yeah.
They can make money, right? So, you know, the scary thought of what you just said, I'll give you an example. My nephew started college in West Virginia State 2 years ago, and he went down with his mom to get him settled in, you know, the orientation, and they talked about people having their guns out in the open and able to carry that way. We just came off school shooting. So what do you think was in her head when she's like, I'm
Right.
sending my kid from New
Mhm.
Jersey because he wants to go to the school, West Virginia State, where people are allowed to carry their weapons and not have to conceal them, right? But we talk about all these school shootings, right? As soon as there's a school shooting, somebody comes in a helicopter, they're escorted by Secret Service to say how sorry they are that this happened and this never should have happened, and that they're going to stand on getting this, abolished, this type of activity. But how many times are you going to stand there giving the same speech about the same thing, right? And now you're going to say, so Texas, Florida, West Virginia, New Hampshire, certain parts of California, you do not have to conceal your weapon. You are free and open to carry. So somebody ticks you off. You have not saying that you have the right, because the law isn't written that way. But it's right there, right? Some people are not going to accept getting punched in the face from other people, especially with social media and how that's blossomed things, into a bigger situation. You get into a fight right now and somebody's recording it because everybody says world star, right? Or Instagram, and they're going to put it up. You're going to be embarrassed. And if you have access to a gun, 9 times out of 10, somebody's coming back to do harm to somebody off of those type of situations.
Agreed.
Yeah.
That's dangerous. My son is 13 years old and lives in Florida. And one of the biggest fears that I have was about the situation with the guns down there. And that was one of the big reasons why I was fighting so hard to get him back up here. I lost that battle, but I will not lose the fight on educating my son on how to handle himself when it comes to those situations, handling himself with police, handling himself with people who might have those type of weapons on them, and it's a scary thought, because how often do we see people when their feelings override logic and reason? That's what it's designed for, your emotions, as humans. And it acts in good ways and bad ways. And when somebody gets hot and they got something hot on them, that's a bad recipe. That's a recipe for disaster. And I fear that for my son all the time. And it's scary. So trying to give somebody space for the fear, I think we have to continue the education process as much as possible, because education can help us bring down the fear. We fear what we don't understand quite often. But if we continue to advocate for the people that also put logic and reason ahead of things, then we might be able to actually turn the tide. Right now, we're in trouble. Right now, we don't got enough manpower to turn things the way they need to be just yet. But hopefully, it's coming.
Anybody else want to add anything?
As far as the fear, all I could do is pray. The only advice I could give is to pray, because it's like it's out of our hands. I mean, whatever is in the cards to happen, it is really just gonna happen. To piggyback off of what Nate said, it's like for us, when there's a crime or murder or anything with a gun, one goes to jail and one is dead, which is a win-win for, our country, because you get free labor for one, and they want to downsize the population. So you got one, out of the way. So, yeah, it's scary. It's really scary.
It is. It is completely scary. Jerome mentioned education, and Khalilah, you mentioned faith. I believe that these two are major components when it comes to gun control or just violence control, because in reality, we cannot control, as Khalilah stated, what the government or everyone above us is doing, because they're going to continue to supply these guns, right? But there are things that we can do beyond legislation, beyond the government. So as a community, what else do you think are important factors besides educating our kids, letting them how to handle a gun, or just mental health, and then having faith, discernment? I feel like discernment is a big factor when it comes to your surroundings, paying attention to your area, like being aware. I feel like this generation, our younger generation, they're so caught up on their telephones. They're so caught
Mhm.
up on other things. They're not paying attention to their surroundings. And at any given point, someone can come out and pull out their gun, and you're not even paying attention. But with awareness, with faith, and with education, these things combined can create some type of change or safety within the community. Do you guys have anything else that you feel will add on to this?
That's a major piece, I think.
Mhm.
Awareness. You have to increase your awareness. I went through this with my son and his mom, just a small, like just a little thing about walking through the airport. Like obviously we fly back and forth a lot. He flies up here, I fly down there, we fly together. But him walking through the airport with his headphones on is a no-no.
Hmm.
Mhm.
No. You're not walking through the airport with your headphones on. You're not going to be walking down the street by yourself with your headphones on. You're not going to do that. Okay. Because you need to be aware of your surroundings. You need to be aware of what's going on. All right.
Right.
And he like to get mad and don't get it. But it's not the lesson about, just walking around the airport. It's teaching you an understanding of why and where you need to be aware of your surroundings at.
Right.
And I think that that's something that we can all give that will help and not just be aware of it, but then you got to know what to do if something pop off.
Right.
All right. What's the next step? You know,
Absolutely.
you can see, something going down, but don't be going over there trying to check it out. We don't do that. Our
Hmm.
skin folk don't do that. We get out of there.
Mhm.
We get out, check it out later.
We'll
What
listen to the
Cedric Entertainer
gospel about
say? Get leasing them. Get leasing them. Girl, they almost got us. Look, that's what but it's real.
it. Right.
It's humor and it comes from a real place. It's because we always, as Black people in this country, have a reason for a heightened sense of fear. All right. That's just the way that we were bred in this country because things have always been against us. We're the only ones that have to have that long conversation over and over again with our kids about police. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? We got to tell them about, you walk into certain places and things get quiet and everybody look at you and you see a lot of red hats. You might not want to be in there.
Right.
That's the conversations that we have with our children. Not everybody has those. So awareness is one of the biggest things, and that's just part of education.
I
Fact.
love that. Ugh. So we could talk about education and we could talk about police presence.
Mm.
Ooh, I kind of want to dive into the police presence, just because you mentioned the police, and I feel like it's the right avenue to go in. Um, when we think of police, we think that they should be providing some type of safety for us. In reality, is not doing that. Um, when police presence feels protective to some and threatening to others, can we differentiate, like, can we distinguish that? What you just stated, can you dive deeper into that, stating that the Black community, they always feel some type of threat because of the police, opposed to others who feel some type of safety? Where do you think that comes from?
I honestly think that just comes from the history of, the culture within the police. And they're not all bad. I've experienced bad police. I've experienced good police. I've been unnecessarily searched and detained. As a minor, my parents not called, just sitting handcuffed. I've also seen officers do their job with great care. Fairness, humanity. Um, that tells me that the issue isn't policing itself. It's the
Mm,
culture of the police that they're in, you know, because police are people and people are all over the place when it comes to, their thought processes. Um, and the accountability needs to be there. There are far more good cops than bad ones, from what I've seen. But the tolerance for bad policing is way too high. It's
mm,
way too high. Real safety, I think, it comes from fair enforcement, um, high training standards, and a strong community relationship. I think those are the things that really, bring a strong, effective police force that people can trust. The more we can advocate for that, I think the better we'll be. But it's going to take some time because the trust has been so fractured over time, and we still have to continue to protect ourselves from the worst possible outcomes. Because even if there are more good cops than there are bad cops, uh I have to teach my son about how to act with the bad cops just in case he runs into one, because he can have 100 good cops pull him over and the one bad one's going to pull him out and Rodney King him. That's the one I need to prepare him for. I don't need to prepare him for the good ones. And that's what we got to worry about.
Right.
So that's the tough part, and that's something that we as Black people consistently have to do. And we have had to do for the longest time, just because that's the history of this country.
Anybody else?
I think a lot of these cops that are in these cities aren't from the city at all.
Hmm.
They're in some suburbs and nothing happens over there. And then they get over here and now they're scared of all Black people or, brown people, whatever, because
Right.
they don't see them. I think to be an officer in the city, you need to be from the city. You need to be aware of how the city is and everything, or somewhere. Like, I just don't think I'm it's like Erie, Pennsylvania or something, somewhere where nothing goes on and it's whatever. And then they come over here and then they're looking like, what's this? Now they don't know how to
Yeah.
act. Now they just fearing everybody that walk past them. I have a problem with that. You know, um, I hate to say it, but they fear us or whatever, but we know what they say and what the statistics say. They say the white man is the most dangerous man in America,
Hmm.
but we're viewed that way. So I don't think, like you said, I don't think all cops are bad. I have a lot of family that are officers and friends, and they love their job. They do their job. They love their community that they're where they're at. And we need more cops like that.
Yeah, we do.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, we do. And we need them to
And
not be tolerant of the bad ones.
Right.
Absolutely.
You can't have them be tolerant of the bad cops. You know,
Absolutely.
That's my point.
if they came down on the bad cops the way that they come down on, people that look like us that they're suspicious of,
Mhm.
we wouldn't even have half this problem. You wouldn't have half of it.
But it's that brotherhood that they always talk about.
There you go.
You know what I mean? It's
Culture.
it's the culture of the blue brotherhood. And
Right.
when we talk about cops, I mean, I got family that's cops. I got friends that's cops. I know people that are cops, right? And we all do, right? And when we, as you said, we don't check the other person because in some ways I think from watching this TV show that I've been watching, I've gotten a different understanding of the black cop, right? The black cop is not accepted by the majority of the police force, right? um and then the black cop is not accepted by the black community. The black cop sits in the middle, right? And if he does his job correctly, we call him a sellout, right? You coming in the community, you locking us up, right? And then if he looks for some type of favor because he sees something like, hey, this young girl or this young guy here, he's just in the wrong direction. I'm trying to help him out. He's got the boys in blue or the girls in blue saying, hey, look, you're not doing your job, right? And gets reprimanded for those things. So I see the black cop, and I'm just talking about the black cop in general, right? So I see them in the catch-22. So how do you hold your counterparts, to a standard when the rest of the police force is going to go against you? Now you're coming to work every day, you're fearing for your life there. But when you come into these communities, like we just talked about, the guns that are owned by some of the people in these communities and how they look at you, not being one of them, because you're actually doing a job. You went to school, you went through an academy, you have a job, and you have to do your job, just like their job could be, working at a supermarket or doing whatever they're doing, right? Being a cop is a job,
Right.
and some of them, some of them, majority of them do want to do it the right way. They do want to work. They do want to provide for their families. They do want to go home every night, and they want to collect their pension when that time is ready for them to collect their pension. But if we don't give them no type of understanding and leeway to a degree, then the black cop is always going to be an outlier to both sides, and they'll never be productive in anybody's eyes.
I agree.
I agree with that.
Nate, you mentioned something about, you mentioned brotherhood and community as well. Now, often we see that within the Black community, there's Black on Black crime. How do you feel? What do you think is the main cause of that? And I know it's a touchy topic, but do you think that poverty, trauma, or survival environments contribute to this narrative where there's not just, police crime against Blacks, but also Black on Black crime?
So I don't want to offend anybody, so I'm going to reserve certain opinions on this topic. I think everybody that's on this panel know me. I've been to various forums speaking on Black crime. And there's people who agree and there's people who don't agree, and that's fine. That's opinion. My basic opinion of Black on Black crime and the reason for it is because we have been made and pitted against ourselves for so long that we don't know how to love ourselves or understand ourselves. We don't understand how it is that I could be successful and then turn around and want these two ladies, yourself and Jerome, to be successful, right? Because that's not what we've been given. From there being the house, quote unquote, Nigger, right? To the field one, to the one who played the middle, right? We've always been pitted against each other, and we grow up pitted against each other, right? And it's a mind state that has now developed for well over 400 plus years, right? Because when we seriously sit back, and a lot of thing about these young kids is, and it's nothing against them, they need to be taught. We went to school, or are the age that I went to school and I learned about Africa. I had parents and grandparents who lived, because my family is originally from the South, who went through segregation. I had a grandmother whose father was a slave. I got told those stories. And now when you tell a kid those are stories, right? They happened, right? When we talk about education, as many of us that are out here, and it's a lot of Black men and women out here going to different places and talking to these young kids and anybody in particular, and just telling them like how important we are as a society. We once were a civilization, right? You can go back in history, the Black Wall Street, like when we talk about financials and money, but they've put us in a situation. I grew up in the projects with 19 buildings. And in those 19 buildings, half of us did not get along. Why? Because you're from the other side of the projects, or you're from this building over here, or you cool with this person here. You know what I mean? And I grew up with that same mentality. Although I was getting told these stories, my peers were telling me a different story. Right? So when you're young, you're so caught up with what your peers say that you live what your peers say, not what others tell you. So like I said, this is a deep thing for me. So I'm gonna let somebody else jump in because it goes a little bit further. I lived it, so it's different for me.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I feel like as far as America in general, there's a lot of things that point to violence. You turn on the TV, you see violence. You turn on the radio, you hear about violence. Kill this one, kill that one. You play a video game, you're shooting people. So I feel like a lot of our kids are desensitized to violence because it's everywhere. That's what we see. And then on the TV, you kill somebody and there's no real consequence shown after everything is done. It's like, oh, he's going to be on the next TV show. So, you don't really see the real consequence until you feel it yourself in your own family. And then you're angry and you don't care if somebody else's family feels that way, but it's everywhere.
It's like a programming.
Mm.
So I agree with both of your statements, Nate and Khalilah. But I have a thing. I don't like the term black on black crime.
There we go.
I always feel like when people say black on black crime, we hear a lot of that coming from white people when they say black on black crime. And I think it's just crime. Because black on black crime, black people aren't killing people because they're black, one, right? It's whatever is going on in the neighborhood. If you're in a black community, then of course the crime rate is going to be with black people because you're in that area, But I come from diverse neighborhoods. I lived in white neighborhoods, and white people cause a lot of crime. So, is that white on white crime, or is that we just call it crime, right? So that's how I feel. Like if you're in a white community, then yeah, the white people are going to be the ones that are causing the crime. If you're in a diverse community, you're going to have a mixture of people that are causing crime. But if you're in a black community, then yeah, the black people are the ones that are causing the crime. So I agree with both of your statements. I'm just against the term of black on black crime because I don't think that exists. I think it's just crime at the end of the day. And I argue the statement with a lot of people, especially in the legal world, because I am a legal professional. Like I'm always making this point because when I hear it, I shut them down real quick because it's always coming from white people. And I make my point like, hold on, time out. So when the white people are doing it, is it white on white crime? They're like, it's crime. I said, so where's the problem here? So that's so like I said, I agree with both of your statements where it's coming from the jealousy, the when they see you making it, the who you hang with. I agree with all of that. I just look at it as crime now.
I love that, Michelle, because that just shows that there's still some type of programming.
Yes.
As much as we think that we're not programmed according to their perspective, those above us, there's still some type of programming. So either way, everything that everyone has mentioned thus far has been from a programming. And I like the fact that you mentioned that because that begins to shift mindsets to those who are listening and even us who have used the statement black on black crime. So thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate that. Control King, K with the King, K with King. You got something?
Yeah, we need to be careful, like she said, with the language, because language can shape perception. Okay. I'm like her. I reject that term altogether. Crime is proximity based. The numbers show it. There's no way to logically argue it when we have the proof.
Yeah.
People commit crimes against the people that they're closest to. That's all that it is. Every group does, but only one group gets labeled for it. That framing in itself is a part of systemic racism. And environment plays a massive role. When resources disappear, crime fills the vacuum. Individuals do make choices, of course, but when there are no good options, there are going to be no good outcomes. And that's really what we've been sitting on and living in for the longest time. Every time we did get something that was affluent, it was taken away, it was burned down, it was, bulldozed or whatever,
Right.
But there wasn't any crime there because we had the resources. And once those are gone, people go into survival mode. And that's just what it is. It's a survival tactic. And that's what we've been so accustomed to. But it's nothing about black on black. It don't matter what color your skin is. You got something that I want. Or they got something that I need. And I just gotta go get it.
Fact.
We don't have any problem with Um, People watching things on TV and movies when we see people doing crime for quote unquote good reasons, necessity. We had to do this because we were doing it for that. We had to do that because we were doing it for this. You know, it's the resources, the environment. Take a look. Y'all remember that movie Trading Places?
Mhm.
Yeah, perfect example. What happened in that movie? You took somebody who had no resources and gave him every resource you could, and you took resources away from somebody who had all of them, and their entire personality switched.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Right? That's not fake. It's an entertainment. It's a comedy, yes, but the best art imitates life. That's a real scenario.
Right.
You give people resources, they don't go to crime because they don't need to.
Right.
You take resources away from them, they become desperate,
Yeah,
and
that
they'll
was
do
a
anything
great
to make sure
analogy,
that they
bro.
survive.
I like that analogy.
Yes, 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 yes. That was really good. Speaking of resources, we know education is definitely a resource that can be beneficial or can be conditioning, right? Because just because it is there doesn't mean that it is good, doesn't mean that it is true, doesn't mean that it's beneficial. So, how has the education system historically served or failed Black students?
Hmm. I think education in general. Um, I think it might be taking a turn now because I see the curriculum that my son is going through.
Hmm.
But I know for a fact that school did one thing really well for me, which was it taught me how to learn, and how to learn so that I could learn what I'm supposed to do next, which is more school, you know, how to understand and apply those fundamentals, apply them forward, but that skill mattered. But where it failed completely was like things like financial literacy, you know, that stuff was just not there.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like if you had home economics, maybe you learn how to write a check, you know, but you were never taught how to make sure something was there so that check cashed and didn't bounce. You know, all of those things uh, gave you a stability, but the world is changing, and you have to begin to innovate and treat and teach people how to live a life. You know, those things are early on, and that's partly on the parents as well. But if it takes a village to raise a child, we need to make sure that that entire village is teaching them the things that they need for their entire life, not just for school and then more school. And then it's like, oh, well, you learn everything in school. Now get on out there and, good luck,
Mhm.
I
Get
guess.
Right.
get on out there and pay this debt that you
Yeah, go ahead and get that debt paid
acquired
off. And
by
good luck.
going to school. You know.
Man, I was just talking to a guy yesterday. He's selling insurance, like getting people insurance, getting the elderly folks signed up for their Medicare and all their benefits that they have, you know. Um, but he went to school for something else. And my man said he finished school 12 years ago and he got $100,000 left to pay. What?
Wow.
Yeah, right.
It's
What?
it's
Right.
so many
Wow.
people struggling with debt right now. There's a lot of attorneys or whatever that are only making maybe 50 to 60,000 a year, and that's crazy to me. Like you
That's
didn't
wild.
spend 250,000 on law school
Law school. Yeah.
that you're still
There you
paying,
go.
by the way, and you're
Yeah.
only making that. There's no, first off, I would never, I've worked in a law firms before here, but I will never go back to a law firm on this side of town unless I'm in Cali or something like that or whatever. I think you have to go to the financial institutions like Morgan Stanley, where I work, those places that are going to pay you because
Mhm.
there's no way you're going to be able to pay off your debt making
Hmm.
60,000 a year. I said, that's a slap in the face. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and even with doctors, there's some doctors that aren't even making enough money and they're struggling, they're paying, and they have this large debt or whatever. So
They got
I personally always say I think college should be free unless it's private. Unless
Yeah.
you're deciding to go to a private college, then of course you could pay, you should pay. But anything that's public, open to the public, whatever, I think it should be free. I think we pay enough
Absolutely.
taxes for that.
I agree.
So
Absolutely.
I
anything
agree.
I
that's
agree.
funded by the state, like, in Jersey, you got records, that's funded by the state. That needs to be
Mhm.
free. So, you
Yep.
know.
Okay. I agree with that statement. We're going to wrap up this segment in a few minutes, but before we do, I do want someone to answer this question. How can we teach Black history in a way that empowers rather than re-traumatizes? Nate, you got anything?
Oh, you telling me we're gonna wrap up and you gave this deep question right here?
I know. We're going to end it there.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass that off to somebody else because I think I'm gonna be long-winded on that.
Okay.
Say it again. I'm sorry.
Yes. How can we teach Black history in a way that empowers rather than re-traumatizes?
When I took my son and his cousin. I try to get them all together all the time because my cousin, his father is just, he ain't there. So I took them to the Black History Museum down in DC, and that was a great experience. It started with our history of slavery, and you started when you went down to the bottom. It goes like you start at the bottom. You can do it any way you want, but you start at the bottom of the building and you go up through the years. Okay, at the bottom is the slave ships, and when you go down there, it's like you're in the slave ship, and it's like tight quarters and everything, and they do it on purpose. But by the time you get to the top, you up there celebrating Barack Obama's win.
Mm.
Okay, I believe that going from the beginning of the history and understanding the perseverance of our people is key to breaking away from that type of trauma that's connected to it, because we don't we haven't experienced that type of trauma. We've experienced our own trauma, and we take that with us as well, but we always overcome. That's who we are. The biggest thing that connects all of us throughout this entire country is the fact that we all struggle. We've all been through some kind of struggle, and we persevere because we're here to talk about it. So I think that building on the hope and the understanding and leaning into the perseverance of who we are, I think that's one of the ways that we do that.
Yes. Such a beautiful way to end this segment. Thank you so much. We have touched on crime, we have touched on police presence, we have touched on education, and what was the first one we talked on? I forgot. We have spoken. What was that?
Gun control.
Gun
Gun
control.
control.
Thank
Yeah.
you. We've spoken a lot within this hour. I want to thank you guys for sharing your wisdom and your insight. Be sure to catch us on part 2 of this discussion.